I'm calling to order a regular meeting of the Planning Board for Thursday, February 4th. If we can all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good. That was good. Thanks, James. Been practicing. So I would like to introduce the board members. We have 3 new board members tonight. And we are down one more, so this is actually, this is really nice to see some new faces here. So I have to my left, Jerry Graybill, to my right, Vice Chairman Mike LaRue. I have Phil Roy, who is a new member. He will be a voting member tonight, although he is an alternate right now. On my TV screen, I have Allison Herlihy. I love that we have girls. And I have Amber Fecto, who is no relation to me, although she is a client of mine. So welcome, new board members. I wanted to take a moment. This is something that I think is very important. James is going to call it the preamble. But this is actually a semi-direct quote from our town attorney that she read a few months ago. And I'm going to start reading it at the beginning of the board meetings because I think it's important, especially because we get such high ratings at home. I want the public and our new board members, too, to be aware of what our roles and responsibilities are. So she reminded us that we are to constrain ourselves to the objective rules in front of us and the rules that have, yes, the objective rules that are in front of you and the rules that have been provided to you. Put your own personal feelings out the door, review the evidence that's been provided and the applications that are provided. You take the information as it has been reviewed by the town planner and often a third-party reviewer. You look and see how those materials provided meet or do not meet the objective criteria in front of you. If a use is permitted in a zone, it is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and rezoning is the only solution to limit uses in a zone. And we're actually going to see that before us tonight in action. But just a good reminder that our own personal feelings are not brought to the table here at the Berwick Planning Board. And with that, I'm going to open the first public comment session, open to all Berwick residents and property owners with anything having to do under the purview of the Berwick Planning Board. If you have anything to say, please come up. And do we have anybody in the waiting room?
We do not.
Okay. Jody. And just state your name and your address. You know the rule.
Jody Rogers, 420 Portland Street. I would just like any input that the board may have or to have a discussion about the fact that the requests that we have made in our Shoreland Limited Residential District, I know it requires a DEP approval or review of some type. I'm not sure which comes first, whether they have to approve something before we could actually put it to vote. I would like to ask that the planning board would consider putting together a proposed warrant to change the limited residential to a limited industrial commercial that's consistent with the surrounding areas, and make it conditional on the fact that DEP would approve it. Like I said, I'm not sure just yet of the chicken and egg on who has to say yes to this first, but we discussed it at length last meeting, and I think I'd hate to get pushed like another whole 6 months or another vote or whatever. So I would ask that the town consider putting it on the list of ordinance changes, and that I will work diligently with James to see if we can get DEP all squared away by the time of the vote, or just make it conditional on an approval by DEP.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Yeah, and we will talk about that in new business tonight. Thanks, Jody. Seeing nobody else, I'm going to close the public comment session and move to the approval of minutes. I know Jerry found something. James, yeah, I was.
Yeah, page 1, 2, 3, under adjournment.
Yeah.
And it says a motion to approve the minutes. It says motion to adjourn. should be in there.
You copied and pasted and you didn't
Yep.
change it.
You didn't approve minutes at the adjournment? Okay. It's a secret. I do copy and paste.
It's not a secret anymore. Anybody else? Mike, did you find anything? Nope. That was the only thing I found. So we are going to then have a motion, and of course, if you weren't here for them, you would abstain from voting on the minutes traditionally. So I just need a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
I'll make a motion to approve as amended.
Second?
All right, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? And all in favor of approving the minutes as amended? All opposed and abstaining? I think Amber's abstaining. Good job. You'll get it. You'll get the hang of it. It's okay.
Right.
It's all right. So 5 approve, 1 abstain. All right, so moving on to new business, we are going to talk about the land use ordinance amendments and 2 rezoning requests. James?
Take over the screen. This is the 3rd meeting, I think, we've talked about changes 1 through 8. I'll just go over them since we have a few new members. I won't go into too much detail, so I'll just jump right into it. Number 1 and number 2, these are mostly cosmetic changes, so nothing legally is changing except for a few nuances. This is done to improve people when they look at our ordinance to understand what it means, and for Jen and I to be able to explain it more effectively. So with any land use ordinance change, if it's highlighted in red and underlined, that means it's new language added. Anything crossed out is deleted. So at this first part here is the litany of changes that are proposed. And what happens at the end is it's boiled down to a nice and concise paragraph that isn't conflicting, because all this stuff here goes on to conflict later on with 7.21. And by directly referencing it and by making a few amendments, it just cleans it up, gets rid of the discrepancies, and it's just easier for, Jen and I get so many questions about this topic, probably averaging 1 a week, not even kidding, during the building season. I think this will help immensely.
Yeah, and I think that we all agreed that all made sense. Makes sense?
Yep. Number 3, what's happening here is this is, for the most part, making marijuana uses more restricted by making it so properties have to have frontage on RCI on Route 4. That was a big point of discussion. Right now, I'll make a point that marijuana uses are capped, and that hasn't changed. That's something that we will be reviewing this spring with the select board to see where we're at. It's the establishment under the same ownership that's preventing this leapfrogging, where even if they're in the same ownership, it's kind of a loophole that we're closing up. And lastly, allowing marijuana testing facilities. Marijuana testing facilities is probably the lowest intensive, lowest security risk, but it also has potential for high property value, high personal property. It's basically a science lab, and it makes sense to have one on Route 4 if we're going to have a lot of marijuana activity.
The marijuana mile.
Yes, well, at least for your
I'm sorry.
York County, it's us and Elliott right now
Yeah.
that have opted in.
Jerry had a question.
Yep.
I got 2 questions. One back up under other marijuana establishments. We had asked this before, like over at Kind Farm, where they're building and doing what they're doing now on those lots. Does this allow them to buy up all that other unused land and continue to grow next to them? All the way down to Blackberry Hill Road
yeah,
and the other way as
I
well?
think they would, there's nothing that's preventing it. at this point.
'Cause that would be one big conglomerate all the way along there.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
it would have to go up on the board every time though. So at some point, we could cap off on how big they could get.
Well, that's kind of why I'm asking. In
Is
other
there
words-
verbiage to that effect?
Not right now.
No, there
Okay,
isn't.
should there be?
Well,
we have the
I mean,
1,000-foot rule,
There's a
but-
60,000 square foot facility that's approved, so I mean, they're only gonna go, what, 10,000 square feet? So at this point, they still have another 50 to go before we
Okay.
start
Yeah.
judging them on what's excessive.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have the 1,000-foot rule
it's
that they
something that
can't
I
be
think
within
it-
1,000 feet
it's
of
something that
somebody
we can-
else.
Okay.
Possibly, probably at this point, something to talk about for November.
Yeah,
But keep talking about it because it's really about, with ordinances, just creating the language that just makes
Mhm.
sense.
Right.
You know, how do we cap the expansions? Because there are some expansions, not size-wise, but use-wise that are pending. There's one at least that's pending,
Right.
who?
Straight Fire Farms.
Okay,
That's something that's,
right, right.
Okay, and then the other question I had, like Nicole said, is down under the 8.25.8 permits. The first sentence doesn't make sense
The
to
first
me.
sentence is very confusing. 8.25.8. A.
the number of conditional use permits granted for, the 4 needs to go.
Okay,
four is a
granted in each zone as of shall be the limit of permits. So there is no actual limit, it's just that, so if 100 people come in on June 9th and there's 100 granted,
This is June 9th.
oh, this was June
This
9th
already
of
existed.
last year. Okay,
It's
that's of
already-
last year.
yeah,
Okay,
it's
so
already-
strike 4 then.
Yeah, I can get rid of, we can amend our land use ordinance for typos and things.
Right.
We can
Okay, just get rid of 4, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
perfect. That good for you?
Yep.
Okay.
That clarifies it.
You may continue.
Number 4, 5, 6, and 7, I don't.
We're taking 7 out, we said, right? The lighting.
Yes, it was taken out.
Okay, good. All right, good. I don't have that. I have
Yeah.
last month's copy, so I'm still going off of that.
Okay,
I'm good. Thank you. I like to hop along.
so the lighting thing was taken out.
Okay,
I'm
good.
just skimming through 8.12, 8.6, personal sawmill, those things are extremely minuscule
Right.
changes.
What about number 9? Do we still have number 9 in there? No, so we took out, oh yeah, so now it's number 8.
Yeah,
So the building size.
Building 8, one thing, the reason why I'm proposing to keep this in here,
Yeah,
we're gonna have a proposal coming in for a recreational facility.
okay.
That's being proposed for about that size.
Okay. So I've been doing a little research, i.e. Googling other towns in Maine and other towns around the United States for if in their downtown area, if they're limiting the size of buildings. And the only limits that I'm finding, I haven't found anyone that limits the square footage yet. The only limits I'm finding are height limits, which we already have. I have found some verbiage, and obviously this is too soon to even think about for June, and it wouldn't apply across the street anyway because it'd be after the fact. But there is verbiage about like the facades and stuff, and I know we have stuff in our overlay already, but it was just more detailed. But I will say that I found nowhere, and that's small towns, big towns, where they're limiting the square footage of buildings. So
Yeah, our village overlay district was very progressive, very forward-thinking, has a lot of architectural elements to it. That's why the footprint size was capped out. But I think going to 25,000, that's it allows companies flexibility, and it's a good size.
okay.
The new one that I added here is number 9 for adding an exception for wholesale businesses. And this is going back to Zach Holt, if you remember that, off of Blackberry Hill Road.
No.
That was the one Dave Andreessen was not so cool about
Yeah.
allowing.
So that was,
It was they were gonna do pharmaceutical,
On
Stuff
Blackberry
over.
Hill Road?
yeah, shipping and receiving type of
Oh,
stuff.
this was during an absence of mine.
so what this is it's under wholesale business,
Uh-huh.
being allowed in the R3 district if it meets the following requirements. It shall not involve the use of heavy commercial vehicles. The wholesale business shall have frontage on a public street. The wholesale business shall not create more than 20 vehicle trips per day.
Okay.
And the vehicle trips per day, that includes employees. So it's a very, I mean,
Okay.
it's a wholesale business that also, I pulled those standards from home occupation standards.
Okay, I was wondering where you got, where that came from.
So that, basically what Zach wants to do on Blackberry Hill Road would meet the standards of a home occupation business. He just doesn't live there.
For now.
He
It
won't
would
live
be
there,
for
period. He won't
now.
live there, period.
If he got big enough, would it increase or would it change? That's the,
Yeah, I mean, if he got bigger,
Right.
then
the footprint, the traffic would get bigger because it would be
it
a lot.
it wouldn't be allowed.
Right.
He'd be exceeding the use allowed.
And who would be the one that would monitor that though? The town? Or
Yeah.
someone would have to complain about it,
Yeah.
about the heavy
Yeah.
traffic?
So as of right now, what do we have for wholesale business? We don't have any of this, so this is more limiting than what we have right now.
A wholesale business right now is only allowed in R3 along Route 236, 9,
Yeah.
and
So
4.
technically, he's not allowed right now on it.
Right.
So this would allow it.
I mean, yeah, it makes sense to have it only in those zones, to be honest with you. I'm not sure that it should be in R3 on a neighborhood road. I think I would want to discuss this more before popping it in for June.
Yeah.
What is the verbiage specifically on the heavy vehicles? Because as I'm reading it, is it a prohibition or is it a?
Yep, so that's,
Okay.
it would be prohibiting heavy commercial vehicles.
Okay, all
So
right.
anything with 2 or more rear axles, is the whole, this thing is starting with the distribution business, is that the deliveries are happening from personal vehicles or
Okay.
Right, right.
UPS truck. type of thing.
Okay,
At
yeah,
this
because that adds a whole nother level of complexity to infrastructure and
Right.
maintaining the roads and such, so
Yeah.
it's just, okay, I wasn't clear on that.
Right, exactly,
Right.
exactly. Yeah, the whole, I had Collector Street in there, which is a defined, those are the streets that are the connection points between the major highways. That's the next level down for streets. But I thought most public streets are those streets, and it's a simpler way of saying it. There are some public streets that are just extended driveways, pretty much. That are
Right.
driveways.
Yeah, I would like to talk more about this before
Yeah,
we
no-
Yeah.
no
before we
problem.
put it to selectmen.
And this is something that, part of a larger discussion, and possibly the comprehensive plan committee should come in here once we have something that's further developed, to talk about how 87% of our tax base right now is residential.
Yeah.
So at some point, at my opinion at this point would be, and this is something that needs to be more backed up probably, and done at a later time, is that the town will need to be aggressive in looking at where we can get commercial uses to help offset the residential tax burden. But we can put a pin on the wholesale business for probably November to give us.
That would be good, yeah. I would like more time to discuss it. And I'd like more time for the public to hear about it, especially, I don't know, Blackberry Hill Road we've got the new development going in, you've got the schools, you've got heavy trucking that already goes down through there. Like there's just a lot going on over there. I can't imagine anybody that lives over there is gonna want a wholesale business there. I certainly wouldn't.
Sure. All right, number 10, this is probably one of the more controversial ones.
Oh,
that
good.
Probably would, I'd probably suggest having it as its own separate warrant article if we decide to pass it on to the select board.
Okay,
This allows a waiver provision for our impact fees.
why?
Most towns and cities, or some towns and cities have them. A
We
handful.
just got the impact fees. Why are we wanting to waive them?
Right, so
Are we making too much money?
in the case of the Edge,
Uh-huh.
we're mandating that 25% of their property is open space. We're mandating them to,
They knew that when they bought it.
yeah,
Okay.
and we're mandating them to have recreational facilities. We're also charging them impact fees for recreational facilities based on the added demand that's going in there.
For What do you mean we're charging them? We're charging them based on how many bedrooms they're, per
Correct.
bedroom that they're putting in. We're
Correct.
charging them for the recreation of the people that they're bringing into the town.
Correct. So what's based off of the scale of the project, we're looking at probably $120,000 of impact fees that they're up against. That has very real potential of limiting, and more appropriately, to speak more broadly about generic examples, is that starts limiting the scale and the investment potential of developments. So what's happening, and to sum this up, what's happening is we're making maybe $50,000 more, maybe if we waive $50,000 more, but we are inhibiting, it might end up being a couple of units of residential, it might be some commercial units, and that's foregone tax revenue in perpetuity.
I haven't seen can you show me something that shows what the impact fees that we've already collected have actually physically gone toward? Because I guess if I saw like bunches of new sidewalks or a new building for recreation for the town, I'd be more inclined to waive impact fees. But at this point, if they're limiting residential, which is what the townspeople have very strongly said that they want, I'm not putting my own personal feelings on it, but that's what the town wants. They want to limit residential. So if impact fees are limiting residential, but also bringing money in, I can't imagine. I would put it as a separate thing. If we're in favor of it and it goes to the selectmen, I would definitely put it as separate. It's super controversial, and I understand your side of it. I
think it's limiting.
As a representative of the people of the town of Berwick.
And this is something that it's tough to bring up at this time. It's something that needs to be talked about more. But I just, it's something that will probably, if the impact fees don't change, it'll limit both residential and commercial development.
Yeah, and that's okay, because we don't have any right now. So, I mean, something will be better than nothing. But it's like, but we don't have anything. I don't know what our impact fees have done. Can you tell me? We've been collecting them for how many years now?
I'll have to get back. We've collected, I know the total. We have about 120,000. We've collected for so 240,000 for
okay, good.
total. And we actually have, side note, we have $120,000 for the acquisition of open space, which is something that the Comprehensive Planning Committee can.
I'd like the acquisition of sidewalks up Sullivan Street.
And possibly putting the cart before the horse, but as far as, the impact fees go, would it be beneficial if they're wanting to develop to do a phased impact fee, a lower percentage to start to entice the business or whatever the project is, and then as time goes by and they're more established, then it's a tiered approach. Is that something that's even, or is that?
It's something to think about. Again, I don't think this is going to June.
Right.
I would be happy to work on it and bring it to November once I see some sidewalks.
Yeah, there's no.
That's all I want to see is some better sidewalks. We all do, right?
Can I just say something? I don't know.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Hi. Okay. So I totally hear both sides of this. I do think maybe having a waiver like Phil had mentioned, where you're kind of scaling upwards, might kind of, if the town is not necessarily wanting these big commercial groups to come in, it could kind of help smaller commercial groups to be able to establish themselves here, so we could kind of get the best of both worlds. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something we could talk about and carry over to November.
Yep.
Very interesting, James. What else do you have controversial? Oh no! All right, so now we're on to all the controversial stuff's at the very end. I see.
No.
Send everybody out angry.
Yeah. Now we're on to rezoning requests.
This one, Phil gave us the exact.
Not Phil Roy. Phil, our attorney.
Okay.
Phil, our planning board. Yeah. There's a pretty straightforward procedure from here. All the property owners will be notified. But this seems to be, it's something that I would recommend. It meets the town's comprehensive plan. And I can summarize too. What this is, and I'll scroll down here, it's rezoning a otherwise residential area that's currently zoned as commercial industrial, which is probably the most, where we allow industrial uses, the highest intensity uses in the town are allowed in the RCI zone. We found out about a few months ago that it doesn't necessarily make sense to have RCI, everywhere where it is. We consulted our town attorney, and it seems like this is a go where there's about, let's see, there's 11 properties that would be rezoned from rural commercial industrial to R3. And R3 is one of the most restrictive zoning districts. There are commercial uses allowed in every zone. It's just a scale between RCI, R3, and then we have some shoreland zoning, which are even more restrictive on top of that.
Are we creating any non-conforming properties by doing that? Have you looked into that?
Nope,
Okay.
nope, we would not. Yeah, no, it's
all residential.
Right. Just like with setbacks and density and all that. I'm just wondering if all of that follows the same as R3.
We might be creating, no, because the minimum lot size out there is 90,000 square feet.
Okay.
Yeah, there might be some setback stuff, but there's nothing that's, prohibitive.
Okay.
Is there a mechanism to get public comment on that, and have we done that?
We will at our
Okay,
next
all right.
meeting.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
Because I guess my concern would be, and maybe I'm showing my
No,
how naive I am to the
That's okay,
process,
we
but
like this.
just trying to wrap my head around it. So if we put it out for public comment and everybody that's down there says, yeah, great, this is what we want, but are we setting a precedence that ties our hands at a later date if someone else wants to do something similar and we've already set a precedence? That would be my only concern.
We're certainly setting a precedent by doing
It's a
this.
great, no, it's a great thing. It's a great point, and I actually, I think this one, I wanted to hold off on this for comprehensive planning, because for comprehensive planning, we're going to be doing a lot of this, where one of the major themes with the comprehensive planning is to look at our zoning map to be more granular like this. Instead of having clean lines, most towns and cities have zoning districts that have, you can't just do one lot that has a different zone, but you have little neighborhoods that are
Pockets, yeah.
specific, and you can create, we have about maybe 10 different zones. We can create 20 zones that have shades of different zones that actually fit.
Yeah, like overlays. Yeah, there are. The more you read, there's really creative things out there that you
Yeah.
can do with zoning.
In terms of precedent, if more people come out of the woodwork that really want to shape their zoning, I think nothing has been litigated like the Pond Road. We went 6 months of, and it really was highlighted that, it was great question. It was highlighted that, hey, this is a zoning issue.
Yeah.
But I do encourage people that, I would love to hear if you think your neighborhood wants to be rezoned. I would just say that what's going to happen is be part of the comprehensive planning effort, because we're going to be looking at all of the zoning districts. And we'd much rather do it all at once.
Yeah. So we got the blessing of our town attorney to move forward with
Yep.
this rezoning. We just need to follow some notice requirements and whatnot, but we can pass this on to
Yep.
the selectmen.
So every
Happily.
property owner will be mailed, tomorrow, they'll be directly mailed, and we'll put a notice in the newspaper. We have to put a notice in the newspaper.
All right.
And then do we want to talk about Jody's?
Sure, I'll definitely, I'll talk to DEP and look at their email more closely to figure out what they need. And I'll talk with Phil Saucier to see what the appropriate sequencing of changes are. Yeah.
It's where are you in the DEP approval or where are we in the DEP approval process?
They said they need more information that's pretty easy to give them, I think. They wanted more information about what buildings are on the lot, the current uses of the buildings.
And what did Phil say about this? I thought I printed out his email, but I don't. I didn't.
I just forwarded you the DEP response.
Oh, that was the DEP
Because
response.
Phil said, talk to the.
Talk to the DEP, wait
Shoreline
to see what they say
Administrator.
before we move forward. So we're not ready to move this forward to the selectmen because we don't
No.
really know we're moving forward yet.
So
But we
does,
are-
does the DEP need prompting from somebody from the town, or are we just in a holding pattern?
I'm gonna see what the next course of action should be between Phil and I'll respond to the DEP coordinator. So it'll be me.
I know.
Yeah.
That wasn't tasking, it was just a question,
No, no.
so.
You can ask them. Go ahead.
All right.
They're fantastic questions.
Yeah.
So that's that on.
That's it on
rezoning.
new business. All right.
I just have one last thing. It's this, the food sovereignty.
Oh, right. That's not in
Which-
here,
Made a couple amendments from legal, and it's fairly straightforward at this point. And what this is doing, it's allowing farmers and food producers to sell directly to customers and not have to go through some state licensing. And this is something that was adopted from the state, so it's well vetted, and it's something that's just a signal to our farmers that we're supportive of the farming industry in Berwick. All right, now I'm done.
yeah. Any questions about anything, Phil?
No, this wouldn't affect like the farmer's market or any of that type of activity adversely, would it?
Only allows sales at your house, so on your property.
Okay.
So that way.
Like duck eggs?
Yep. Duck eggs,
So-
Oat milk.
honey.
So for instance, when we do the indoor farmer's market, does it adversely affect that?
You couldn't bring your produce and sell it. You'd have to have licensing on
Right.
that.
It doesn't adversely
Okay.
affect it though,
Yeah,
no.
it
It just
doesn't,
allows you
okay.
to set up a farm
I think-
stand in front of
Okay.
your
Yeah.
house, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I know we've enjoyed coming to the farm
Yeah.
market.
Yeah.
I think if anything,
I hate to
it's
see
gonna-
that go away.
It
Yeah, no,
shouldn't
I-
affect
No,
it,
no.
yeah.
Okay.
No, this is actually the opposite of what an ordinance typically does.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's actually, if anything,
It's
would
less restrictive.
Right,
Right.
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
I like
that's
it.
exactly what
This
I like
is
it.
allowing you to sell your extra produce.
Okay,
So if you
excellent.
had a vegetable stand, you could
Right.
actually have a stand at your end of your driveway that people could drive and
Okay,
pay for.
Even though
it.
people do anyway.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
Any questions, Mike?
Nope.
Jerry?
Nope.
Allison, any questions? Amber? All right. Well, then we will move on to our second public comment session. Jody, anything else?
Jody Rogers, 420 Portland Street. My question would be, is there a chance that we could, does this need to be like more input from DEP and so forth to get public review in the next meeting?
Yeah, just because it's got to come before the board again before it goes to the public hearing, so we can make sure that we're good with everything.
So that's
yeah.
still possible?
No, because our next meeting is public
Probably.
hearing. This will be in November.
highly unlikely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Because the board would have to review it. Whatever you get from, we'd have to review it before we send it to the selectmen, which is the
Yeah, I
purpose
mean,
of our next meeting.
We're putting the public hearing notice tomorrow and
Yeah.
then putting everything we're amending online, right?
Yeah.
It'd be hard to.
Okay, and I know there's also a public comment session that occurs at the is it the selectmen?
The selectmen's meeting, yep.
Yeah,
they have
but
two
you
public
can't add anything at that point. It's what's already been
Right.
discussed?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, we had already voted on, we'd have voted to pass it to them, and then they'd vote it in or not.
Okay,
And they voted, to be voted on.
okay. I mean, I would ask if there's anything that could be discussed tonight, if we get the information we need before the town.
I mean, unless something strongly changes early next week,
Yeah,
then I would just say definitely not. But
okay,
I'd say there's a very, very, very small possibility, but I'm not closing the door. See what
okay.
DEP says, see
Yeah.
what,
Okay, so you did get some response from them on this, and they were looking for
Yeah, they-
existing buildings and use?
yeah. They ask pretty simple questions.
Okay,
But if they ask for something more, like I don't know what else they could ask for, whatever the process is, or what their approval process is, and what our attorney says for,
Right.
if he thinks it's appropriate to do a condition on DEP he might say yes, he might say you need DEP first, but I will ask that question.
Okay. Would you folks be open to conditional if we don't get an answer from DEP?
I would have to refer to the town attorney on that.
Okay.
I'd want to hear what he has to say about it.
Okay, fair enough, thanks.
All right, so we're going to close the public comment session and open our informational items. I have 2 items of information for you guys. Dave Andreessen update. He's doing a little better. They have moved him to, I believe, the neurotrauma unit. He did have a little setback yesterday and has pneumonia now, but has been communicating, which is a huge plus. And from what I hear, our code enforcement officer had a baby. So congratulations, Jen, if you're at home watching.
She's watching.
She is.
Hi, Jen.
Anybody else? James, you have informational items?
I'm just welcome to the new folks on the board and for all the added volunteer energy that's going on. It makes Berwick, what makes Berwick special are the volunteers. And if you guys have ideas, bring them forward because we can do a lot and we can do a lot together. So I'm thrilled to have new energy and
Me too. I'm glad to see some girls on the board with me.
me too. Yeah. It's always good to have that balance.
So I was telling Phil this earlier, but ladies, so for the adjournment, it is kind of our weird little tradition over the last 8 years or so that the newer folks on the board will always make the motion for adjournment and second it and whatnot. And the more elaborate the motion is, the better, the more points you get. So I am looking for a motion for adjournment.
I'll move to adjourn.
Okay.
Is that,
Okay. And a second, please.
was I not
A
supposed to?
second.
No, you were. Yes, you were.
All right,
All
checking.
right. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Allison?
Oh, I'm in favor.
All right.
Good night, guys.
We'll get you guys trained.